Welcome to DEFCON 3. I'm KT McFarland. In the last few days, we've seen ISIS, this al-Qaeda-related terrorist group, take over large sections of Iraq. We've seen their leader, Mr. Baghdadi, declare himself a caliph, like a king, like a religious king, and he's declared his new country, that includes part of Iraq and Syria, as the new caliphate. He's also said he's not stopping here, that he's on his way to other countries in the region. So joining us to make some sense of all of this crisis that we now have that we didn't even know we had even 2 weeks ago, is James Phillips. He's a senior research fellow for Middle Eastern Affairs at the Heritage Foundation. So thanks so much for joining us, Jim. Can you make some sense out of this? Who is Mr. Baghdadi, the new caliph of the new caliphate, and why has he been able to succeed so quickly?
Well, Omar Baghdadi is a nom de guerre for an Iraqi who joined al-Qaeda in Iraq to fight against the U.S. and the Iraqi government back in the last decade, and he's risen through the ranks. He's very ambitious. He has a personal vendetta going with the leader of al-Qaeda, Mr. Zawahiri. And when Baghdadi tried to extend the writ of his group into Syria, Zawahiri tried to push him back and say, no, he said, let our Syrian al-Qaeda franchise, al-Nusra Front, take care of that. But Baghdadi resisted that. He broke away, and I think he wants to supplant Zawahiri and become Osama Bin Laden's true successor.
Well, he's also issued in the last couple of days statements. We've now seen him. He's come out in public. He's talked about returning to the simpler ways. I mean, the hypocrisy of also at the same time wearing a very expensive piece of jewelry while he's saying that. But he's said that they want to take the movement to Jordan. They want to move to Lebanon. How serious should we take his threats?
Very serious. Al-Qaeda in Iraq already bombed hotels in Jordan back in 2006. It was called Jordan's 9/11. Al-Qaeda affiliates have already launched car bomb attacks in Lebanon, and they consider not only Lebanon and Jordan but also Israel to be part of Shams or Greater Syria, and they want to overthrow all of those governments and supplant it with an Islamic State, or in their words, a caliphate.
You know, Jim, when we've seen over the weekend that Israelis, young Israelis, were seized, kidnapped, murdered, and that the fighting between the Palestinians and the Israelis seems to be kind of, it's always been at a low simmer, but it threatens to boil over. Is that connected in any way to al-Baghdadi and what he's been doing in Iraq and Syria?
Well, Baghdadi would love to be able to foment the same kind of violence in the territories that he's doing in Iraq and Syria today. But it looks like that was a Hamas operation. Israeli authorities are still looking for 2 missing Hamas operatives who disappeared the same day that the boys did. But it is true that al-Qaeda has some affiliates in Gaza that are even more radical than Hamas. And I think in the future you will hear about these kind of terrorist operations that are orchestrated by ISIS, not just by Hamas.
All right, well then, can you also talk to us about the increased alerts that we've had, that the TSA is apparently going to ask people to turn on their cell phones, to turn on their laptops, particularly if there are people boarding flights coming to the United States. Is that new terrorist threat in any way connected to what's going on in Iraq and Syria?
I think there is a link in the sense that there are reports that have been confirmed by U.S. intelligence authorities that ISIS is cooperating with al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which has one of the most talented bomb makers in al-Qaeda, Mr. al-Asiri, who in the past has developed bombs that don't need metal in any way and that use chemicals that aren't detected by bomb detectors. He was the one that invented the bomb that the so-called underwear bomber tried to set off on Christmas Day over Detroit. And he may be having other things up his sleeve. And the fact that ISIS, which is in a position to recruit a lot of Westerners that could fly to the U.S. On their European passports if they have them, ISIS would be in a position to put these bombs in motion on board airliners. And I think that's part of the problem that's been addressed by the most recent warning.
Okay, well, thank you very much for connecting all the dots in the Middle East. And it's not a pretty picture once you start connecting them all. James Phillips, who's the Heritage Foundation's Middle East scholar. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you.
And that's it for DEF CON 3.